Welcome back to the FAQ Business Podcast. Today we are joined again by Robyn Hawke, completing her session about interior design and its impact on office productivity, branding, and the wealth of the business, which is quite surprising, but a really interesting discussion. She's also going to talk a bit more about the business like you aspects and also, of course, bring in a productivity hack. So as a recap, in part A, Robyn talked about her self-doubt. She talked about how she was a business on the side as a mum and turned that into a business with the mum on the side and how that impacted her business. She talked about the way that we can bring brand into your office space and an amazing story about how she effectively added to the brand's mission. She also talked about what makes a functional office space, including in your own home or in your business. Today, in part B, we're going to go over nature, color therapy, legal considerations, working from home in a space like a garage, the crazy WHS obligations in Australia, plus collaborations, and of course, her productivity hack and some actionable education. Hope you look forward to today's episode of the FAQ Business Podcast. Our episode today features a wonderful guest, Robyn Hawke of Inspired Spaces. Welcome, Robyn.
Thanks, Jane, for having me. I'm really excited.
Well, Robyn is an inspiring award winner, working on multi-million-dollar jobs, been in business a whopping 16 years, so has a lot to teach you as a business like you. And to top it off, she will add some insight into how your workspace, whether home or office, affects your productivity, your branding, and ultimately your bottom line. Welcome to the FAQ Business Podcast for business owners, covering 4 pillars: actionable education, inspiring leaders, businesses like you, and thought leadership, where we challenge your thinking. Hosted by myself, Jane Tweedy, I'm founder and lead trainer of FAQ Business Training, where we want to avoid you getting ripped off or ripping yourself off. We'll feature an amazing diversity of guests with lots to educate and inspire you. Let's jump into today's episode of the FAQ Business Podcast.
Proven that a view to nature improves your well-being. And if you can't see it in reality, even pictures of nature, if it be artwork or murals, will decrease the stress level in an office.
Well, I was just going to ask you about the view to nature thing, because I was actually thinking about this a bit earlier before we came on, that you see some people when they put the window behind them and put their desk in the middle of the room facing away from the window. But with that view to nature comment, is that kind of then counterproductive?
I suppose it depends on the reason why they did it. Is there a glare issue? Is there a fact that what they're looking out at is not nice? Is it because they're just going to make the room functional? So you could mitigate that by having some artwork or something that has nature on it.
Or even a mirror maybe to reflect it.
So a lot of your Asian clients and companies there's even been reports of big companies who will actually move their physical site because the feng shui isn't positive to a profitable business. And you either really believe that or you don't. But it's about the general principle about the feng shui is having enough open space that the energy can move to all parts of the space.
Fair enough.
With that, then you throw in your color psychology.
Yes.
Okay.
Very different with different nationalities.
Yes. And as a general rule, say orange, for instance, will create talking and eating and all that. So that's a good color to be having in your breakout areas and for that sort of thing. And again, use the classic example of McDonald's. They do red and orange. Look how much they turn over, how much noise is associated with that space. I mean, a lot of it's to do with the finishes as well, but that's that. If you need an area where people need to be much calmer and brought in, then you use your blues and your greens and that. And then there's also the psychology that's associated with color. You know, how many accountants' offices have got the navy blue or the royal blue, the white, and they might throw in just a tiny little bit of red, just to, they'd be a little bit. I had another company who broke 3 years ago. they broke the stream. Their actual logo is pinks and purples, which goes right away from that. But it's run by two very, very, very successful business women.
Yeah, I was going to say it must be a female brand with the pinks.
And it was a female branding thing, and their graphic designer was female as well. And it was like, let's break away the norm. Let's stand out from the crowd. And they did it, right?
Awesome.
And it also built, because they used the diamond as their branding, and it also fitted with that because diamond, purples, royal,
yes,
it all goes with that. So affiliation with Anala, we donate a lot of our time to Anala, which is for disabled adults. And they're based on the Steiner philosophy, and they use a lot of color therapy.
Okay.
So when they were doing their precinct, where my daughter goes for her day placement, I helped them with that. And it was based on what the function of each of the spaces were the colors. So did we need to bring the client in because they were everywhere? They were, all over the place. Well, then we'd do that with that. If they were so introverted and wouldn't do anything, then we'd put them in the room that has the oranges and the reds, etc. Very much into color therapy, and that goes back to even like everything you have on crystals and things like that as well. Is biophilia. Now that's a new thing, and that is people's connection with nature, wanting to seek out nature. So one of the simple things you can do is put live plants in your space, textures that are related to nature, etc. But that's the next big thing in office design, is about connecting with nature and bringing in the value of plants and nature, etc.
Yes, I've tried to put a plant in my office. It hasn't been that successful because it keeps getting these little bugs all over it, and I'm like, oh, I'm over it. I think it's going to go now.
And just one more thing to go with this is when you do the well-being, if your office is really well designed and has good organisation, that reduces stress. You know yourself, if you've got a clean desk, you walk into a clean desk, you go, yeah, I'm ready to go.
So that obviously impacts your productivity and makes everything better, which helps economics. So that's awesome. So, okay, so this all sounds brilliant. We go, yes, we want to do something with our office space. So can I just go and knock down walls and just make something new happen? What are the legal requirements?
No. You're going to do yourself in front of work health and safety, for sure. Okay, you have to get a complying development certificate is usually all you need, because the actual original building is usually have the DA already done, unless you do that. And in that, there is a whole number of theories you've got to do. So, for instance, with access and mobility, you must also incorporate the Australian Standards 1428.1 standard, which outlines everything in terms of accessibility, doors. So things, for instance, you have to have the door 120 mil off the wall so that when the door can open fully, to have an egress space of 850, so in emergency the door is fully open, a wheelchair or a couple of people can get out at once. There is things like you've got to have behind a reception desk 1500 space, so that it means that anybody who's in a wheelchair can get and turn around in there. Any space that is exit to a fire thing must have 1200 square, I'm talking millimetres here, square space that they can walk out. So that means that if people are converging on a fire exit, they can all go. You have to have, for instance, what they call a fire egress at any point from the furthest point to the closest exit. It must be no more than 20 metres. And that's not as the crow flies, but as the way you walk around the workstations. You've got to have fire exit signs. You've got to have wayfire signs. Your handles on the doors have to be between 9 and 1100 millimetres off the ground. Have to then have all your electrical, mechanical, engineering all have to sign off on that they are meeting that. So all those things are part and parcel of it, that you're doing it. So look, minimum you're up for probably $15,000 to $20,000 in fees.
If you're doing structural change.
Yeah, if you're doing some structural change. I will walk away from a job if they're not going to do a CDC for an office. I feel so strongly about it that I will walk away from it.
What if you were going to do something like a work from home and you're going to convert your garage into your office?
Okay, look, and it depends if you've got staff there. versus if you haven't got staff. If you're working from home and converting to office, you probably need to check with council about a home business requirements, if what you're doing with that. You certainly do need to make sure that you've got adequate ventilation, heat and cooling. You've got easy exit spots. It's these big organisations that are really, really important that they cover themselves because there's so many variables that go into it.
Well, I remember the laws changed, I know, in Australia a few years ago, and it now requires you that if you are changing the internals of a premises or whatever, and you're on the first floor, you now have to provide disability access to the first floor. So a lot of people were getting caught out because they're thinking, oh, that's a perfect location for my business. And yet, no, because if you make that change to make it work for your business, you've actually got to somehow provide access up the stairs.
Yeah, and look, and I had an office, there was a small office in North Sydney. The only access up was a small, narrow cement stairs. There was no lift. The irony was it was a lawyer who did immigration law for visas, etc. We actually had to make that entire office wheelchair compliant, yet there was no way anyone in a wheelchair could get up there.
Oh my gosh, that's ridiculous.
Yep.
Oh, you do look at the
And
laws
that was why the building was earmarked to be demolished in 10 years. That was why the rent was so cheap. And we argued with the certifiers saying, look, there's really no way anyone with even if you put a wheelchair lift, it was going to go. Is it right that it's like that? No. But however, it's an existing building. It's an existing building, and that's a decision that you have to make. Now, for you, for that client, because she's doing visas and etc., and unfortunately, reality is if you have a disability, there's not a great chance that you'd be allowed in anyway. So, and that sounds absolutely horrible to say, but that's what life is. For instance, we were discussing yesterday, my husband had to take my daughter to a special needs dentist, but it was at Willoughby and no parking. Like, it's a special needs dentist, so it means that good 50% of your clientele are going to be at least in wheelchairs. They're going to have mobility issues. They've got disabilities that you're not going to be going to that sort of dentist and paying, we're talking a huge premium to go to that sort of dentist. And I was like, why? They just didn't think about when they moved there. And all it does is make my husband really, really angry.
I'm so sure it does.
Yeah, because he has mobility issues as well. So he's trying to take my daughter with mobility issues. He, through his illness, has mobility issues and trying to get to a space that's supposed to be for special needs. That is not thinking ahead.
I mean, that just to me seems obvious. Like, pick a place that has, good parking, good access, if it's for that audience. But like you say, if your clientele is absolutely not going to be disabled because of whatever reason, because I had one that was more of a Pilates studio or something like that. And it was like, well, they weren't really going to have those type of clients. And I had another one that potentially could have had disabled clients, but she was more than happy to go to them. So there was no need for them to come to her office. So you're kind of like, well, there's ways around it to make sure you're not stopping the disabled coming to you. Like, disabled.
You're not discriminating. Yep.
No, you're giving them another option, a better option, saying, I'll come to you.
Yeah.
So you just look at it sometimes and go, the brains behind it, like you can understand that they don't want to discriminate against the disabled and things. And I'm sure, given your history with your daughter, you would 100%, want that. But there's a reality here as well, right?
Yeah, well, the reality is we're working with buildings. So this office one we're doing at the moment is 40 years old.
Yeah, it's hard.
And so there were certain areas that we could only refurbish. And even though we would have liked to have made them bigger, we haven't been able to.
Yeah.
Because the flow-on effect of what we would then have to make to meet today's standards was huge for a very small gain in what we were going to achieve. So that is some of the limitations. So when people actually look at an office space, they're just looking at it. Now, if you're in a big office space, it's not like, oh yeah, I want to move the toilet here. But it's not just a matter of moving the toilet there. Where is your plumbing? How do we access it? Can we draw a core? Can we do a core hole into the cement slab? You've got to then X-ray the slab to find out where all the supports are. So there's a lot of variables to go into just doing it, and people don't realize that.
No, it's frustrating. So let's just turn a little bit here and we'll just look at the sort of business like you aspect. I don't know if I mentioned it at the start, but Robyn has been in business with Inspired Spaces for 16 years now. So that's a really good knock. You must have learned a few things over those years. So what would you say are your top 3 things that's helped you to stay in business for that 16 years?
Education, education, and more education. I think coming from a teaching
Dream on my
background,
podcast.
yeah. I think coming from a teaching background, I've always valued education.
Yeah.
Right? I've come from teaching, and I know you've heard me say it before, I've come from a teaching background where the nature is to give away information. That is what you do. You give because you're enabling people to progress.
Mhm.
And one of the hardest things it's been for me is the fact that my intellectual property is my creativity. And as soon
Yeah.
as it leaves my mouth, that's it. You can't take it back. It's not like a product. Well, you didn't pay me for that product. I'm taking it back. It's gone. So that's been one of the things. And I think the education has been not necessarily, I mean, I went back after I quit teaching and did 3 years full-time study. I needed that. I needed that for my qualification. Now, I'm not talking about that. Yes. But attend workshops, attend network groups that are about education. I'm not talking about the ones that you go just to get leads. I'm talking about ones like our IBN Inc. network group, whereby the whole time it is about, every time you go there, it's about an education about your business, whether it be about your website or about using social media, etc. That is so important. Next thing is developing systems and procedures.
Yeah.
Learned that one the hard way. One of my staff members, her sister died unexpectedly.
Oh,
Um, young sister, nice and ill, unexpectedly. So one day she was here, the next day she was gone overseas for 8 weeks.
wow.
She left, and I realized she knew certain parts of my business that I had no idea about because we hadn't systemized it.
Mm-hmm.
So when she returned, we have now got everything. We've done screen grabs, we've done video recordings of how to onboard and that. So when she left to set up her own business, the new staff member, we had all that, and she's been able to work through
Yeah.
each of those parts. She knows how to onboard all our clients into the system. She now how to set up their ArchiCAD file, etc. So that was that one, and having templates, which I think we've mentioned heaps of times before, or I know you would have,
Yeah.
is that your templates for your Outlook. You get an inquiry and it's this, or here's your proposal. So that's already set up with the samples of what they get, etc., etc. So that's already there. And probably the third one important thing, you've got to keep up to date with technology. All right. Up until the pandemic, you wouldn't see me on video. Absolutely would not see me on video. Now I do Zoom calls, Teams meetings all the time.
Yeah.
Don't give a stuff about how I look anymore. I've gotten over that and that
Yeah.
thing. And then, like, for instance, you've got to keep up to date with technology. Now, the ArchiCAD, the CAD program we use, which is super expensive, like $10,000 a license, I started studying on that on version 8. We're now up to version 25.
Wow.
So by keeping up with that technology, one, we become faster, and two, we can offer more.
Yeah.
So we're now, like, we just tended to just offer, because of the time constraints, we would just offer 3D line drawings. Now we're getting to the ability, we're not quite there, but we're nearly getting to the point of nearly providing colored rendered 3D images as a standard inclusion. Not quite there, but the technology has improved enough that it doesn't take our computers out for 24 hours to do it.
Yeah.
Whereas previously, we
Yeah.
couldn't use the computer for 24 hours while this was happening, while this was processing.
Yeah.
So keeping up to date with technology is absolutely vital.
Perfect. Was there ever a time in that 16 years that you're going, that's it, had enough, I'm calling it quits?
No, because I did that with teaching.
Okay, awesome.
I've been there, done that.
Moved on.
And the day I walked out of teaching was the day that my life just Oh, yeah.
It was what
And
you needed to do,
yeah, I
clearly.
needed to do it.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic. And of course, now I'm doing what I love. So it's never been once in that time have I thought, why am I doing this? And I
Awesome.
can say that
And what
honestly.
awesome, that's amazing. So what has been your biggest learning over those years?
The importance of collaboration and
Okay.
alliances. You can't do it all. So if you want to grow, if you want to make an income that can support your family, you can't do it all.
Yeah. Agree.
So I had one lady who was working for me who moved to Queensland with her husband. So she still does a lot of my social media. She was a designer. She knew how I worked. She loved that. So it was a win-win for her because she was moving up there with no work. So we do that. So she works that and we work together on that. She does a lot of it. A lot of times I don't even know what she's putting up, which sounds bad, but we're so in sync. But then there's other times where I'll say, okay, here's a video before and after. I want a whole series on this video and talk about kitchen design, talk about bathroom design, and we'll link it that way. I've given a young girl who is straight out of college. She does casual work with me, so she'll come on site for styling and measure ups and that, but she's also looking after the Instagram for me, and I'm outsourcing that. Collaboration with other people. I don't, for window treatments, that's not my focus. So I outsource that to someone else whose focus it is. That is the part of it. You can't be over everything. You can't be expert at everything. So outsource the things that give you grief or take up your time or not
Yeah.
making your money when you put your time to it.
So it definitely sounds like your approach is not competition, it's community.
Yeah,
So I believe that you
absolutely.
do some mentoring and you also run a group called the Designer Chicks. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, I run this group with another lady. It's about a group of women, obviously, from all genres of design. And the whole concept is about that we come together and we share information. We've become the board of directors for each other, and we have people who are landscape designers, architects, we've got artists, we've got stylists, we've got curtain window treatment people, we've got decorators, we've got graphic designers, what else? Feng shui specialist. So what happens is that we all come together and we run these groups, and Lucia and I bring in experts like you've been presenting to us. Sometimes we'll run it and give our expertise on what's happening with business and how to deal with it, etc. Sometimes we'll bring in reps. Sometimes we just workshop what people's having. We call it chicks of the round table, and they bring up any issue they're having and we brainstorm with that. So I'm a big believer that no one owns a design. So if that product wasn't available, would I have designed that? If you hadn't made that comment, would I have
Yeah.
thought to go along that way? So design is a collaboration. It's impossible to say to one person design that because they can't. Because
Mm.
if that material wasn't available, you may not have been able to design that. So that is what my thing is. A bit like know who your competition is,
Yeah.
embrace it, and help each other. And every one of us is slightly different. And in that, our strength is not the tossing of the cushions. Our strength is the spatial planning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you've got other people in the group that are cushion tossers
Yeah, and we
in
do
a
it
nice
and
way.
in a nice way. And I'm not denigrating the cushion
No.
toss or whatever, because everyone has their own thing. And that is the problem with the interior design industry. It's unregulated. So
Yeah.
because you've got an ABN, you can call yourself a designer. And that is the big thing. That I think there should be a redemarcation about what each one involves. And no one's more important than the other. It's just so
No.
that people know what they're looking for. So in any one job, I've got a job whereby I've been the designer. I've brought in the window covering person. The landscaper's been in. The stylist will come in. Okay, our photographer moved to Melbourne, so we haven't got her anymore. We haven't got a photographer, but normally we would have brought that photographer in. So that whole group we brought together. Now there's all those jobs those people wouldn't have done if they were scared of competition.
Mm-hmm.
And competition doesn't have to scare you. And there's always
No.
going to be someone better than you, bigger than you, but you've got to believe in yourself. And there's people out there who are brilliant at marketing, and they're better at marketing. Doesn't mean they're a better designer, but they're better, but that's where they're kudos, and kudos to them for business wise. And the same here. So if you're sharing this information, and if you've got, most of these people work by themselves, there's only a few of us that have staff. If you're working by yourself and you hit a blank wall, we have a private lounge on Facebook. They hit a blank wall and they go, I can't solve this design problem. How would you decide it? Or I'm looking for A, B, or C. I cannot find it anywhere. Or my normal builder's booked out. Can you recommend someone else? So it's not taking away from your business, it's actually enhancing it. And I think if you take that attitude with whatever industry you're in, it's a positive.
That's perfect. Yeah, I love that. And I'm very much the same approach. It's community, over competition. And as you know, when I have presented at IBN Inc., for instance, sometimes there's been 5 business coaches in the room.
Yeah.
And it's
like, you all have a different take on it.
100%. And that's the thing. We all have our space and we're not competing. In fact, we refer to each other because we have things that the other person has a strength that we don't have. So it's your attitude, right? It's your mindset. It's the way that you think and the way that you act.
Yeah, like there's a team of 2 designers in Cronulla, and we, it's probably one of the companies that does exactly what we do. But for me, it doesn't matter how big a job it is, Cronulla really is too far if I'm going to do the job properly, if you've got to be on site, etc., and vice versa. So I get an inquiry for Cronulla, I flip it to them. They get from here, it comes back.
Yeah.
And some people go, oh, why? Well, by the time I factor in toll costs, petrol, that, to get to Cronulla and probably back them up to $30 or $40 just in tolls. Yeah. Then you're that. So you've got to
plus 3 or 4 hours opportunity cost of your time.
Yep.
I mean, hello, this is adding up. Yeah. And that's what people have got to remember, and having those connections that you can refer to, because either you're not the expert in that area, it's too far away from you, or whatever other reason is perfect. Why not have these people we can connect with? So I think that's brilliant.
And it makes you look like a much bigger organization than what you are.
Exactly. You've got contacts.
Yeah.
So just to finish up today, can you just give our listener that's listening in 5 things they could do right now to improve their workspace or improve their productivity and work well-being because of their improvements to that workspace?
Okay. So we'll start off with the first one on the assumption that you've got an office space and a reception area. If you have a lot of visitors to your reception area or a lot of visitors to that space, I would concentrate on that first. What I suggest you do, either get someone as a trusted friend or go in with open eyes with a notepad. And as you walk through the door, what is the first thing you notice? Is it the signage? Is it the cracked floor? Is it the dirty chairs? Or is it those uncomfortable chairs? Or is it the really nice comfy chairs I want to sit in? What is it you see? Do I see a crowded space? Whatever. So do it with open eyes. You become so used to what you got that you don't see the faults in a space. And I use a classic example. Our very first home my husband and I ever bought was an old Californian bungalow. And we'd done it all up except for one room where we obviously, newly married, you run out of money, have a child, you've got none left. And when we first bought the house, it had purple carpet, burnt orange curtains, and blue-green walls.
That's beautiful.
Now, yes, we actually got rid of, obviously, the curtains and the blue-green walls. That was easy, but we just didn't have the money to get rid of the carpet. And then people would turn up and walk into this back room because it was our entertainment room, and their jaw would drop because they'd see this bright purple carpet. And it's like, oh, yeah, our carpet, we'd forgotten about it until we could afford to get rid of it. But we had overlooked that limitation. And that is why sometimes it's better to get someone, a trusted friend, or someone that you can't take offense. You need someone who's willing to be honest with you and do it. So it could be simple things like, I'll go replace the thing, or I get my chairs cleaned, or I'll go and buy a couple of new chairs. That is what I do. For your staff, if you've got staff, invest in a really good ergonomic chair, right?
Yep. Yep.
No going cheapo, Kmart, reject special. It's going to cost you more in health claims down the track than it is. Now, it's difficult when you've got like for the big office, we've got 100 odd people. We couldn't send the person into each person to do their own chair. However, we did know, the client told us that they've got several very large people that need the bigger chair. So we've made sure that we've got a series X number of those chairs and we've done it. But for my own staff member, I said, you've got X amount of monies to spend. The only requirement is it's black so that it merges in with the office.
Yep.
All right. Yep. Now, the chair she's chosen, I hate. I just couldn't sit in. And that my chair that I chose that I find so comfortable, I sit in all day, she hates. But she's short and I'm tall. Yes. So that's another thing. If you're buying, like, we've got to buy 100 and you can't send 100 people in to choose a chair, just not legit. So we made sure, for instance, the ergonomic chairs can push out if you've got longer torso, or they can bring in. So those sort of things. So invest. What would seem like a lot of money at the moment, that I'm talking, you're looking at $400 or $500 minimum to get a decent chair. And just do it. Okay, this one can apply to, so that one's the ergonomic chair where you're working from a home office or an office space. And so is this one, the biophilia, the importance of nature. Add pot plants. And even if you can't grow them, even fake are still helpful.
Well, like this little one here that I have at my desk.
But it also brings a smile, and that ideally, obviously, because your air quality is improved by actual plants. But if you're in an office, it costs, you can actually hire plants, and we're talking minimal dollars a week, like $20 or $30 a week, where they supply the plant, and then if it dies in 6 weeks, they replace it.
Right? Where do I sign up for this?
So there's places out there like that. So and a lot of my things will do that. They'll do that then, because they don't have to rely on someone remembering to water the plants, or someone to do this, or someone to do that. It's just done, and it's done. Now, as soon as you add greenie to a space, it helps you. You feel better. You feel good. Okay. Another one is, do you need a fresh coat of paint? Because that's something most people can do themselves. And then go back to the color psychology again. Why? What is it you want? Now, for instance, you'll notice my office is white, and the reason being it is white, which sounds a contradiction because I'm an interior designer, is because we have so many colors that we can't have. We don't want a strong color. Like, I'll say if I used yellow, for instance, if I had a yellow office, then the color, then if I was trying to choose a white or put colors together, that would it's that. So I've got white, because then it gives me a better space to see colour in its true light. So think of that. And then, simplest one, consider supplying a coffee machine and fresh fruit if you're in an office. I was doing a little bit more research on here, and I think it was the HR boss of Yahoo said, you need to think of your office as a communication tool, not as real estate. And the more times that the people can meet, actually collide, basically, he calls it a collision of people from different departments, the more creative you're going to be. You're going to be more creative than sitting in front of a monitor. So the coffee machine is that where you integrate, where you might have your sales team here, and you might have your marketing team or your accounts, and they never talk or never meet, and they all think they're each other's job's more important than that. Have this coffee machine is where they meet. That's like, oh, how was your weekend? How's your kids? This. What about this idea? That idea. So that is very, very simple. That
we always called that the chat around the water cooler.
Yes, the old water cooler. Now it's the coffee machine. And again, if you're a slightly bigger place, you can. I know people like Nescafe and obviously other ones. You can actually rent the machines, and they do the upkeep. They do everything. Again, there's one less thing you have to do with that. Yeah.
Awesome. And how about we just wrap up today with, I like to get our guests to provide a productivity hack. And obviously you've been giving some during the session, but can you just give us a final productivity hack or a tech tool that you use in your business?
Okay, mine is the old ABC list. And
Okay.
it cannot be, it's the ABC list that's not on your computer, it's not on your electronic diary, it's actually on a piece of paper,
Yep.
A4 page, A, B, C.
Yep.
A is the list of things that has to be done by close of business today, and essentially you don't go to bed until it's done type thing. So you've got to be realistic. There's no use putting on there that you've got to write 4 proposals on your A list today.
No.
It's not going to happen, right? So it's about putting that there. You then do the next important thing in your list, and that's your B list. And then you see probably usually your more longer term goals that you should be working towards. The whole theory is what you finish A, and then the next day, part of B goes on to A, and then part of C goes on to B. And the actual physical effect of getting a big red texter and crossing through what you achieved
I think tick.
is perfect. And for me, it's not just a tick mean, it's like you just cross it out because then it's done. It's done being gone. That when I do though, when I stop doing that, I'm not productive. When I do that the day before, I am so productive. I get through so much work that way.
And it's
So
something
that's
so simple and anyone can do. So there's nothing stopping you from doing that right here, right now. So that's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Amazing.
And it's pen and paper, no electronics, because you've got to get that physical feel of achieving it by just crossing it out or ticking it off.
Well, thank you, Robyn, so much. I might have to spread this over 2 podcasts, I think, because there's been
Because
so
actually
much.
we didn't even get through half of it.
So we've gone through a lot today. So, we've gone through a lot of stuff about the actual office design, the productivity side of it, the design, but also the business like you stuff, the things that made you a success in your business. So if anyone wants to get in touch with you because they want to have your amazing interior design skills, or maybe they just want to have a bit of a chat because they're really inspired, how should they get hold of you?
Okay, the best way is just to give me a phone call, have a free 15-minute discovery call on 0401 068 670. And if you're interested more, I've actually picked your interest in the importance of an office as an economic strategy, not an expense. On my Inspired Spaces YouTube channel, there is a video called Office Design Case Study. And yes, it goes for about 8 minutes, so put it on double speed. It goes in depth as to how this is an office that we're using as a case study, why we designed it the way we did, and the philosophy behind why we did it, and how it functions. And have a look in that. And that goes, again, a lot into what we've been discussing today about how productivity increases, your profit increases, staff morale increases, etc. And this particular case study is a classic example. I did their very first office for them. It had 6 workstations. Within 18 months, because that office was so effective, they outgrew it. And then the next office, we now have, I think, 24 workstations and 4 offices and meeting rooms, boardrooms, etc. And they're all integrated. And that is a classic example of how a really great office design can increase your business in 18 months. So it's
Wow.
not just the know-how and the nous of the owners, it's all these other things as well.
That sounds amazing. So definitely something worth checking out. I just want to say thank you so much, Robyn, for your time and for just being so open and so sharing with us today. And I really thank everyone listening, and hopefully you have got some great tips out of today, and look forward to seeing you again on another episode of FAQ Business Podcast.
Okay, thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening into today's episode of the FAQ Business Podcast. Today was part B of a 2-part session with Robyn Hawke of Inspired Spaces. If you did miss part 1, please go back and check it out. It was our episode 9 of the FAQ Business Podcast. Catch you again soon. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the FAQ Business Podcast. available on all good podcast services. You can subscribe today via faqbusinesspodcast.com.au or directly on Apple iTunes, iHeartRadio, or Spotify. Subscribe, follow, share, and where able, review our podcast or leave us a comment on either YouTube or our blog page. Thanks for helping us to help you, the small to medium businesses who are growing and want to make a difference. Look forward to connecting with you again on the next episode of the FAQ Business Podcast.